introduce Dr. Peter Davey and his talk on the Vikings and our Manx landscape. Thank you.
Hello. I've put up a picture of a bit of Manx landscape. It's not exactly typical because, as you know, our countryside is really variable. Well, it's typical in the sense that there's a green lane and there are enclosures and there's grass and there's sea and all this kind of stuff. The first kind of question in my mind, have been in my mind for at least 45 years, is how do you go back from this, what we see now, to both how it came about and what it was like in the past, in different stages in the past. And if you go back to the 1870 maps, it looks just like this on the map, pretty well, this particular bit. But you can't go much further in mapping our estate maps, and just a little bit. And even the documentary material doesn't get you very far with land use and landscape. So I thought, well, as the Vikings are the people who sort of emerge into our history, I just think, well, what was it like when they came here? So I've divided the introductory section into three, before, during and after. So it's not that we don't know anything about the landscape before the Vikings. The island has got a lot of wonderful sites, which we'll know, like Castle and Urn, Neolithic sites, or Carn one of the most splendid platform cairns that we have. It looks down at Kirkmite, look down into Glenwillan, and then when you're on it and you're looking to the right, you're looking down to Laugh Glen, the people who put this had a real understanding of topography and landscape that we have. But we know very little about what else is going on around a site like this, or a site like that. A setup, Southborough, with lots and lots of houses on it. And yet, how are the people living? You know, what was their impact on that? What was their agriculture like? How was that all working? Well, we've not very clear idea about a lot of these things, and I'm sure as well. One source of evidence is pollen. Pollen contained in the peat. And for this period we can see, and I haven't got time to do this, but you can see the tree cover on the island reducing progressively, so that by the time you get to probably the Iron Age, but I'm not sure, but there's virtually no tree cover. So people have hit the landscape in a big way, but it's very difficult to document actually on the ground what it's like. I mean, did they have enclosures? If so, what were they like? What were the buildings like? A whole range of questions we don't know. So I decided to spend a little bit of time looking at the period up to the Viking arrival around supposedly 900, going on specialists in this field, not what I think. And they've changed their minds a bit over the years. But one thing we do have are keels. And this is a plan showing many of them are keel sites. We've got a large number, of which, I don't know, 30 or so you can go and see yourself, and they're quite magical sort of sites. Now because last year I talked about early medieval cemeteries that went with the lintel graves that went with the keels. I'm not going to do that again, except that the date range you're looking at is from about 400 up to 900 and beyond for those burials. So the keels are in the landscape. Some of these might be post-Viking, for all we know, but a lot of them certainly pre-Viking. if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm assuming most of you do, but if you don't, this is a calpheric with a keel and a relic, a graveyard around it, and it's sitting almost next to Spook Bay. On a kind of a lot of discussion about the location of keels in relation to each other and in relation to topography, which I haven't got time to talk about. But we have all those sites in the landscape, so when the Vikings arrived, they couldn't avoid them there. And in some places, groups of keels can be found, such as on Staffordshire and particularly at Mackle, which have always implied, and seem to still imply, some kind of monastic organisation of the period that we're talking about. This is before the Vikings were coming. Well, they have quite an impact in lots of ways, many of which you'll be aware of, I mean, not least linguistic. But first obvious thing are the burials that we have. The Vikings come and bury the dead. Now, in the case of Baladur, one that I'm showing on the right, that is the keel that they put their ship burial next to. And you'll assume you'll know the site. There's another ship burial at Knockadoogie, and a possible burial I'm going to talk about later here. And there are barrows as well. What they show is the relevance of the keel's the position and existence in the Viking mind, if you like. The other thing we have a lot of are crosses. When I say a lot of, we've got this splendid collection in the British Isles, I would guess, in most respects. And I'm just going to mention this relatively new book, which is the work, it's under the name of Michael Barnes, who's actually put it together, but it's pretty well the life's work of Ray Page, who studied the runic inscriptions on the island in huge detail. It's a wonderful book, partly because it's his life's work, but also because the introductory essays are really rather insightful, because alongside the runes, so you've got the runes running up and down here, you have the actual style of the cross that has been subject to a lot of study over the years, and the styles are dated from Scandinavia, partly, mostly, and we have cross decoration styles in all of the main groups, and a lot of runes. I think it says about the 40 runic inscriptions that have been corrected from the island, and I think a note was made somewhere at the beginning that there's only 60 from Norway. And if you compare the relative areas or in the population, it just shows you what phenomenal collection we've got. Indeed, some of the introductory discussions are suggesting that some of the development of runic writing which happened here and went back to Norway. It wasn't just the other single direction. This crosses in Belaf, and it's got this sort of interlaced decoration which puts it in this Bora style. One of the interesting elements are discussed in some detail by Michael Barnes himself in the book is the relationship between, is the chronology, looking at the relationship between the chronology given to the runes by runologists as opposed to the art historical, mostly art historical chronology. I mean, borrows a ship, so it's a variety of sources in Scandinavia. And at least, as things are at the moment, there's certainly a tension between these two chronologies. Most of the Manx crosses are put later than the runic people think that the runes are. So that is still to be fully resolved. But these crosses usually dated from about 950 on the island. They're Christian. So when we're thinking about the Vikings arriving in, say, 900, by the time we get to the middle of the 10th century, these appear to be pretty well absorbed into the Christian structure which already existed. And that structure doesn't change until rather later. The other thing to mention is the coin hoards, which are, again, about significant numbers, about 20 from the island. And this is Cap Michael, one of the Cap Michael hoards. And there are some interesting because they occur in two batches. There's about 20 hoards from the island, 8 of which sit in this first batch, late 10th century, and 12 of which fit into the next batch. Now, when these are being deposited, you see the earliest date they've given is 955. When these are being deposited, the Vikings are already creating Christian memorials and relating to it. So it's not surprising that when you look at where these sites are, they are usually on kill sites. For example, the one near, well, going to the red ones, Andreas and Balak Ferric. I always get the two muddled up. Yes, so that's Ferric and that Queenie. They're both associated with keels. And then the later ones, these two from Count Michael should be rather close together, the docks, the one's Patrick's Isle, the most recent of the big horse from Osman and the ambulance board. When they are being deposited, the Vikings are already within the Christian mindset. And they're putting their boards near the chapels, the religious centre. Whoops. Oh. Yeah, so that's just a few points. I myself have been working mostly on the period immediately after Viking, particularly in the 12th century, and that's because of having worked and being forced to work at Roslavi and working on the site there. So you immediately see by the 12th century a whole lot of features which are obviously high medieval, like, for example, mocks and bays with Crockhound Moor. And yeah, that's the museum had this reconstruction done some years ago, an attempt to show what it might look like. And I've recently suggested that it was put there to simplify portage for Viking ships between that bit of the Irish Sea and the bay at Portsmouth Mary, and indeed Portaria. Yes, and of course Castle Russian, which may be on the side of the mock, but it was a 12th century castle, but most of what you see is 14th century. So we've got a sort of classic Western European medieval looking setup. We also have documents, and although we don't have many, the documents bound together with this is a page from the Chronicles, but the documents that are bound together are really quite useful. I'm going to talk about one of them later. This is quite fun because it's the monk, presumably a monk, has done a little doodle in the margin when he's said, oh yes, this is the foundation of the Abbey Marie de Furness, so this is the first Furness Abbey building, and presumably this monk was either directly from Furness, which was presumably a Russian. So this document in itself is a kind of history of the dynasty, really, and it's not terribly interested in topography or landscape, although bits come in. There's a nice description of a battle in a field next to the Church of Russian, for example, which is quite a significant event in the described, but mostly it isn't terribly of great interest. But an important point now to make is that instead of a system of keels where you have hundreds of them or many of them distributed over the country and people being local people relating to a particularly local keel, presumably, in about 1150, between 1149 and 52, the parish system was, well, the new diocese was created and the Isle of Man was put in it, which meant the Isle of Man was then being run as a diocese from the archdiocese of Nidaros in Norway. So this reorganisation was mainly for financial reasons, but it also quickly involved, both in Norway and here, the creation of parishes, traditional, as they'd been known for quite a long while, actually bits of territory that were held together and persisted over time. So we've got our 16 then 17 parishes there. And one of the documents that goes with the Chronicles and the Limites, which is a separate document, which is the monks writing down the boundaries of the land they own. And the bits of land that Russian own are in pink on there, and the ones that we've got a limited description for is that one, whoops, and the Laxi one, don't seem to be working, oh yes, the Laxi one. And we haven't got any monk's description of the German or these little Russian ones. And I just suddenly realised the other day, this is probably because there was something debatable about all three. So they had to write it down. It became critical in the 12th century to establish what they actually held. There was doubt about Laxi because it was being contested by some bees. There had been doubt about Glasgow because they'd only just taken it over as a separate, would have been a separate abbey. And there was doubt about the Maloo, the biggest one, because they made a huge error when they first did it and gave away great chunks of their territory accidentally. So they had to redo it and put a correction in the document. So those three documents survive, and there aren't documents for any of the others. So I'm going to look at one, I think I'm doing all right, I'm going to look at one area only, where where there was limited description, or whether we know where the monastic land was from later rent books. I, with a lot of friends and students and others, have attempted to survey all these areas and see what they're like on the ground, because they are telling you something about the country in the 13th century, absolutely, but almost certainly in the 12th century, because the lands are being handed over to the abbey when it's being founded. And arguably, much earlier, and that's a bit we can't really decide about. And I have written a chapter in the report on Russian Abbey, which is in the press at the stage of having its index picked over. So it's completely gone through all the processes up to the indexing point. And there's a whole chapter on all those lands and the survey work that we did. And I'm just going to mention one part of one of them, just to show you some of the interesting kind of interrelationships between different approaches to the landscape, which come out from when you actually try and understand it. So I'm going to look at geomorphology, topography, history, archaeology, and then think, well, what was it like when they turned up? Now this is where you're going to have to concentrate. So this is a most recent geological map, and the blue is boulder clay, which is sort of glacial stuff, but boulder clay in these blues and browns are sitting on hard rock, so that's all kind of hard old rock. But north of that line, it's all glacial deposits of different kinds. And the bit that I'm going to look at is particularly this bit. Actually, in a wider sense, but this bit. So I want to imagine that you're in Ramsey and you're driving north, you cross a bridge, then you go uphill. Yeah, you're with me, you go uphill. From here, you go up the slope, and then if you're going to go to Derby or Cronk, you then turn left, and the road heads along here, and then crosses and finishes up in the Cronk. If you go that far, the Cronk is sad, you know what I mean. So that's alluvium, the most recent type of deposit, so what's going on there? Well, that's supposed to be the pink area I showed you in Lizea covers a big chunk of that. So that's what it sort of looks like now. It's not very come hither-ish. If that's slightly bleached out, but can you see there's a kind of wiggly depression running in the middle? And you can see it pretty well dead flat. It's nice. I think somebody flew over it after snow, and the snow was sort of melting differentially, and you could see all these funny little rumbles and things. But as it were, the mainland, the main glacial material going north towards Bride, you see it at the end, at the back of the photograph. So you've got a big expanse. That's the alluvium that I was showing you. And that's an air photograph of it. Now, just to revise, this is the glacial material, the plateau gravels and things that I showed you, and this is the road coming down it, and then the road dives off onto this flat. The photograph I just showed you was taken here, looking that way. And this doesn't go as far as the dry land, as it were, to the north, to this particular air photograph. We had some years ago, we had a coring program trying to see if we could understand what was going on across that area. This was part of a program looking at the lake glacial deposit from as far as out to sea beyond Ramsey Pier to the Croc. So it's right across that bit of the island. So we look at this bit well, and you can see these lacustrine deposits, or lake bed type deposits, with peat growing in some areas. That's the view of the main drain, looking roughly north. So you can see the glacial material jumping up in the background. You can also see these gullies. The main drain is the most recent event to hit this place. In other words, sort out the drainage of this boggy mess kind of thing. We also had the chance, because Mr. Radcliffe did some deep ploughing on the edge of this area, and a whole lot of trees came up. So we had a chance to do some dendrochronology on the trees, the oak trees, and they mostly turned out to be later Iron Age, and they'd fallen in to the deposit from the edge at all at different dates. It wasn't one event. It covered about 700 years, these trees. But there's a whole story about them, which I haven't got time to go into.
Yeah.
But the document that I've been, that is actually tells you a little bit about what that area was like in the 13th century, is this page from the Limites. And I've transliterated it for you, so it's now easy for you to read. We've not only transliterated it, but removed all the horrible abbreviations. Because if you look at the original, you know, that's est, that little bit. Woof, ooh. So people who do this can read this quite easily, but it's actually well written and fairly easy to read document. But the bit I'm interested in is the fact that they're describing this part. They're describing the land belonging to the Abbey of Manx, and you start with a lacu, a lake, and the lake is called Heska Akheimti, and we've had a great deal of debate among linguists as what on earth that means. It isn't agreed what it means. One, I think, means thought it meant Lake of the Abbot. I think Broderick has it as a boggy lake, which is not very helpful, but anyway, it's a lake. And you then go through, you ascend it, you go up to a place which is called Munin and Riser, and then you go through a wood, which is called Core, and then you finish up at a place called Quidikitur, however you pronounce it, I have no idea, Alcon Play. But I'll come to it in a minute, but it's usually translated the bed of O'Connelly. In other words, the burial place of someone called O'Connelly. Yes. That's what the linguists say it means. Even Broderick said that. Yeah, so I'm bound to believe it. So this this is a sort of composite of what I've been trying to do just in this one area. The blue is from the LiDAR, and it's also from the government flood prevention mapping. So they've mapped the LiDAR to 550 mil in different grades. So that not only shows you how low-lying it is still, but also, even more interestingly, it picks up a lot of the gullies. You see them? And the one that I showed you down the straight one is that one. I was standing about there. That's where the road is there. You can just pull off the road and go to the gate and take a photograph thing, looking down there. I did in fact go through all the extant air photographs, because there's actually quite a lot. Got to the point of trying to get Fenella and Logan to draw all these gullies on one map, but realised that this was actually almost as good in that this is actually showing what the topography was, and looking at it from the perspective of other parts of these islands and northern Europe, this looks very like an estuary. It looks like an estuary, silting up estuary, where the tide comes in and it fills up with water on the high tide. And then the coming out tide creates gullies. It's very well studied in other places. And the question really is, at what date does it silt up completely? Which I'm not able to answer, except that in the limites it's called a lake. So what we did was to try and reconstruct on the map, with some help from people who've done it before, the line of the boundary of the abbot's holding. This is only part of it, because obviously holding all the farmland is in Sulby and up here, off this drawing, because I'm only just dealing with this one bit. And most of this boundary makes relatively good sense in terms of what they're telling us. The good thing about the limites is topographical. They're interested in telling you to go to a particular point because it looks in a certain way, so that you know where you are. So there's no debate about who owns which bit. Yes, so we looked at, I showed you, this is I couldn't, I'm not going to try and pronounce it. And then there's a site called Rosslyn. Now it's quite a good etymological series, which you will see from in Project and others, between the name of this burial site with a monument that's still visible, called Cronkenham. It's quite a complicated process to get. It's called Cronknowell, and then Cronkenham, to get back to here. But it makes very good sense because it's a very prominent point. When you're driving on the road, just in case you're interested, there is a public footpath right there that will take you along the edge there. So the photograph I'm just going to show you is taken from the public footpath. And when you're on the road is going through here, and then down onto the edge of the lake, and then across the lake. And on the left, you pass Cronk Brook, supposedly the Cronk of the Rock, or whatever it actually was, the rough Cronk, I think it's meant to be. This site is quite prominent. And that's the footpath, and the lake is immediately beyond. So if you're coming across the end of the east end of the lake, this is a really obvious landscape pointer. Now it was excavated by Bruce and Cullen in 1928, and the results were very interesting, but somewhat ambiguous in some ways. So, for example, that's a plan, Bruce's plan of what they found, which appeared to be, well, it's a lot of little burials, possible keel, and some sort of ditch feature, and there had been apparently defined, and probably handy in the northern Hollywood, there's a Bronze Age pillar, supposedly Bronze Age pillar from the site. So it's a very prominent site anyway. But they also, that's the best I could do from the original photographs. But it's in the lake, it's down on the right there, and it slopes very abruptly down, and you can see some of the structures that they were looking at. But they did find, apart from keels and early medieval colour crosses, they did find some ironwork, which they thought was, well, at least one piece was Viking, certainly, and there were rivets as well, which they thought was from a ship. So, if you look at Broderick's note on this, he says a ship burial. I think that has been debated by David Wilson and others, to whether it does mean ship burial, or these are not rather highbrow wooden coffin nails, as it were, rivets. Nevertheless, the Vikings spotted this, and presumably at least buried an individual there, if not a ship there. Of course, it would seem like home to them, because all you've got to do is sail up on the tide, and we'll be there. So this is just to show you how that fits into the overall study of the Lezayre Abbey lands, which is a much bigger area, which I've shown in blue here. The pink is land belonging to the king or lord, and you can still see a little bit of glacial, because that was enclosable and farmable, whereas the illusion wasn't. That drain I showed you a picture of was there, it is there. So, among all of the monastic holdings, they had access to the sea, and they did here, because the tide is bringing water into the estuaries in the lake. They're then able to use the energy of the outgoing tide to go out to sea. The other thing that I think is curious about the limited description, I haven't got time to do it obviously in detail, but it starts off with the bit I just showed you, the beginning of it. This is the land of the monks of Manx go from a lake, which is called, and then it goes round the whole lot. When they get round to here, they reach the Sulby River, right? So it's Sulby River, right, fine. They go down to the Sulby River, and then they come across the lake again. It never mentioned the river again. So if the river was there, if the river was actually functioning as a separate river there, it would have to put it on. It wouldn't make it. This wouldn't work as a legal document. So I think that almost confirms that we're still estuarine at the time the Vikings arrived. Yes, I think yes. So when you drive along the road, you go out from Ramsey, you go past Cronbrook, and you get onto the road. It suddenly becomes very flat and straight because it's effectively an enclosure road. There are no hedges. There's trees. There's no Manx hedges because it's a recent piece of enclosure, and it goes like this until you hit the Andreas boundary sign. When you hit the Andreas boundary sign, suddenly one great hedge goes off to the road. And that's the other bank of the lake. So my feeling about it is that one needs to do this sort of study as much as possible to understand how we got to where we are with areas of landscape, and then feed that into what we're going to do in the future. Because at a very simple level, someone might decide to put, I don't know, a wind farm in the middle of there or something, and quite innocently thinking it would be a suitable place, without knowing that there's all this very quite complicated and interesting background to how the area has been used in the past and how significant it was for people in the past. So that's only a tiny example, but I hope you found that interesting. So, thank you.